Closing date, signing date, possession date. A common area of confusion at the tail end of a real estate transaction. Hi, I'm Mike Doggett from Windermere Real Estate Citigroup with a short video about another important step in the home buying and selling process. By far, one of the most common questions I have had throughout my real estate career has been from buyers, when do I get my keys? Or from sellers, when do I give up my keys? I am going to be referring to our Northwest MLS Form 21, the Residential Purchase and Sale Agreement, to help in explaining what these dates mean and hopefully answer the question, when will you get your keys? The first date we will talk about is the closing date. On page 1, line 11 of the Purchase and Sale Agreement, there is a blank space where a closing date can or should be inserted. This closing date is an important factor in the negotiating process, so careful planning should be made prior to determining this date. Setting a realistic and achievable closing date will be important. Writing in a 20-day closing may seem to be a strong negotiating point to present to a seller, but if the buyer is dependent upon financing, the chances of this closing in 20 days are remote at best. A 30-day closing time is usually sufficient to complete neighborhood reviews, inspections, appraisals, along with giving the title, escrow, and the financing institution ample time to complete all of their requirements for this transaction. On page 3 of the Purchase and Sale Agreement, under Closing and Possession, there are instructions that explains what happens if the closing date occurs on a Saturday, Sunday, or a legal holiday. Hopefully, prior to writing a closing date on this form, a calendar has been reviewed and days that a county recording office may be closed have been identified and won't be chosen. If by chance a legal holiday or weekend day has been agreed to, there is language on this form that covers this case. So, we've set a closing date for 30 days out. When do you get your keys? The second part of line 11 of page 1 of the Purchase and Sale is for possession. You have two options. Your first option is possession on closing, which I will always recommend. The second option is other, where you write in the possession date, which can be risky and would require or could require additional forms to cover the days when title has been transferred but possession has not. Early in my real estate career, it was standard practice that possession would be written as closing plus 3, meaning the seller would not have to vacate until 3 days after title and ownership had been transferred to the new owners. As you can imagine, this has the potential of causing some big problems should something happen in those 3 days. Murphy's Law has a habit of showing up at the worst possible time, so my recommendation has always been that possession shall be on closing. The last date we'll discuss is the signing date. It is not a line item on the contract. Nonetheless, it is an important date and one that often causes confusion. The signing date is the day that a buyer will go into the closing agent's office to sign documents that have been prepared by the lender, closing agent, and the title, and to deposit funds. This is usually done 1 to 2 days prior to the closing date that was agreed upon on page 1 of the Purchase and Sale. The closing agent will arrange this signing appointment with you once they have final approval from the lending institution. After signing of both buyers and sellers, the closing agent then processes these documents back to the lender and title company, where they are held until they can be recorded at the county recording office, which should match the closing date on page 1 of your Purchase and Sale. People will often confuse the signing date with the closing date, expecting to get the keys for their new house when signing closing documents. This is not the case. The boilerplate language on page 3 of the purchase and sale states that seller shall deliver keys, garage door remotes, and access codes to the buyer on the closing date or on the possession date, whichever occurs first. It goes on to say that buyer will be entitled to possession at 9 p.m. on the possession date. That 9 p.m. time frame is a no later than time, meaning if the sale has been recorded and buyer and seller are prepared to change possession earlier in the day of the possession, then do it. Go ahead and do it. So to summarize, the closing date is the day that the buyer will be handing over the agreed upon price to the seller, whether that be by cash or financing. The possession date is the day that the purchaser gets to move in. The signing date is the day that the purchaser signs the closing documents, or the seller, and they should not expect to get or give up the keys on that particular day. I hope this clears up the confusion that often surrounds these 3 different dates. I appreciate you taking the time to watch, and if you have any additional questions about the home buying or selling process, you can comment below or contact me directly. I'd be honored to help guide you through the real estate process. Once again, thanks for taking the time, and we'll talk soon.